Kia ora, New Zealand. Welcome to Sweet Chain Live. My name's Matt Drake. This is episode 71. 71. Good evening, Brady Kuech.
Good evening, Matt. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm all right. The cough has gone. The illness generally has gone, which is great. And yeah, it's still incredibly cold. But other than that, everything's going well. Now, we've got a great show lined up today.
Woo!
We've first of all, we're going to go through some hot scores from around the country, as we normally do. And then in a minute, we're going to introduce 5 more guests to the show. And we've got a round table discussion on disc golf tournaments in New Zealand. We're hopefully going to be covering a whole heap of subjects within that to do with formats and divisions and costs and structures and how does NZDG play into all of this. So if you've got any questions as we go along, or you want to make any comments that you'd like any of the panelists to comment on, then please put them in the comments below. Make them clear who you want to answer the question, if it's one for one person or for the group. And yeah, we'll get cracking straight into it. So Brady, hot scores, take us through the South.
Let's go through the South, starting as ever in Invercargill. Let's go with Queen's Park and the Southpaw. Stephen Reed taking out the hot round this week with 15 under par. Good shooting, Stephen. Up in Dunedin, we have Chingford Park. Cameron Mackey and Tom McKay tying at -5 for Chingford for the hot round this week. And -5 will also take it out at Brockville. Tom McKay with another hot score tying with Sergey. In Queenstown in the Gardens, Todd Murray coming in at 10 under par for the hot round this week. And at Tucker's Beach, Ethan Stout doing some traveling, coming in at 10 under par. That's a pretty hot round at the Sunshine Beach. Over the Crown Range, Wanaka, Ely Point, Ben Quinn comes in at 3 under par at Ely Point. And at Lismore, Akira Kuro doing the work, coming in at 8 under par for the hot round. Up in the Garden City in Christchurch, Jelly Park, Callie Thompson getting it done with 13 under par. Brooker Ave, it's Ryan Budgie coming in with -1 this week, so a little bit of cooling off. But Willie Taratna comes in with a hot round at Queen's Park with a 5 under par for the hot round this week. Rounding out Christchurch and Warren Park, the new 18, Dylan Budgie again, Jasper Vandermeer, and Kevin Carpenter coming in at -10. Big shout out to Nelson Tasman Disc Golf. They had a club day out at Wayne's World. Andy Clune's little shindig he's got. And out of retirement, Westport's own Luca LaBelle coming in even to win the day. To finish off the South, Matt, take us through the North.
Fantastic. Starting in Berrenpool, Jung Ha and Flavio Mayorga tie us up with 6 under par to take out the hot round for the week. And over at Hikoikoi, Jung Ha again, and Jack Ryan this time, joining him on 4 under par. Hardcore Park is Brady Kuech with 6 under par, 48 at Hardcore Park in Upper Hutt. And it's Arthur Horn's 8 under par at the Linklater family-friendly course, which takes out the hot round. Mark Kennard and Jason Mallion tied up at evens at Maryland's, and over in Topor, Steve Lawson's 4 under par was enough to win the week. Up at McLaren, it's Ian Marshall who's 2 under par is good enough for the hot round this week. And up at Henderson, Sam Hitchie and Richard Waterson tie at 12 under par. So now we've had a little bit of news come through from NZDG, the remnants of NZDG that's come through in the last few days, and essentially an announcement on the majors for next year. So if you haven't seen this, spoiler alert, the nationals for next year, North Island Champs is going to be held in Topor. South Island Champs is going to be in Christchurch at a course to be confirmed. But great for Christchurch to be hosting a major. And Nationals is going to be at the Southern Smash in Invercargill. So some pretty great tournaments there to look forward to. North Island Champs and Nationals are going to be in March. They're a fortnight apart. South Island Champs likely to be a little bit earlier in the year. So, Brady, what do you think? 3 pretty easy to get to locations, or at least from Wellington anyway.
Yeah, and I was going to say the idea that all of these are going to sell out pretty much instantly if they haven't already.
Totally.
So yeah, I was gonna say, like, make sure you are like, figure out when you get to register and register ASAP. All of
Those
those,
other buttons.
yeah, within a week. So yeah, it's great to see. Like they did super well this year on tour. So it's great to see them once again getting another tour and again kind of stepping up into from South Island champs to a national. So congratulations to them. And then also Hayden runs a great tournament. So to see Topor kind of stepping up and taking on that North Island champs, it's great to see that as well.
Fantastic. In other news, the nominations for candidacy to NZDG next year was extended to 7:00 this evening. So, so hopefully there was some more people who put their names forward. On Sunday, it's due to be announced who those who put their names forward are. Will be over the course of the week after Sunday, inviting those people to come on next week's show. Ahead of the AGM, which is due to be held on the 22nd of June via Zoom. So tune in next week when we'll have interviews with potential candidates and talking to them about how they see NZDG going forward in a pretty unique situation, right? With the whole board essentially going. So anyway, right, let's get into the meat and bones of today's show. Today's round table is about tournaments in New Zealand. It's the first one of these we've done, and so yeah, I'll bring in the guests, and then we can we can start, and we'll work from there, and I'll run through a bit about how this is going to run. So, good evening to all of our guests.
Good evening.
Hey. So joining us tonight, there's 6 people on the panel. So first up, you know him as the co-host of Sweet Chain Live. He was also the tournament director of Nationals 2022. He's the captain of Team Sweet Chain, the human highlighter. Brady Kuech is our first panelist member. Down the bottom of the screen, co-founder of Generation Disc Golf, has run several series of events down south, including Sub-Zero, that's taking place this weekend. Former team captain of NZDSS is Morgan Harteveld. Over in Invercargill, we've got Bray Marsden joining us, a member of Team Innova, assistant PD of the Southern Smash, and very publicly has put his name forward as a candidate for tournament director of the NZDG board in the coming year. In the middle of the screen, we have Hayden Shaw, who's the owner of Disc Shop. They run lots of pop-up events throughout the Auckland and wider North Island region. A lot of course installation, and also he was the TD of the Topor Classic this year. To middle left is Jackson Sullivan, co-owner of RPM Discs, multi-time tour winner, and has competed in multiple world championships. And finally, in top right, we have Krastins, who's the current NZDG tournament director, made quite a few tour changes this year, and is a member of Team Innova. Good evening, gentlemen.
Hello.
Good evening.
Right. So the way this is going to work is I've got a few questions that I'd like to put to the panel and to kick the discussion off. If there's any questions that people have got as we go through, then we'll come to them if I think it's right. And I'll also want to keep us on time, so I'm going to keep us moving along. All right, so that we're not here all night. I expect we'll last the normal kind of hour-ish. So off we go. Right, my first question for you is around the format of tournaments. Okay, so this is as a tournament director or as a player, what do you consider when you're designing a tournament or when you're thinking about going to a tournament? What are your considerations with format? And I want to know about things like, do you have a Super Six or something similar to that? How do you tend to set it up? Who wants to kick us off?
How are we going to do this? Are we going to go like you, then him, then that way?
Yeah, Brady, kick us off.
Sweet. So yeah, like Robert's introduced some new tournament guidelines coming in. Like it's been a long-standing tradition in New Zealand disc golf that it's a 3-round event. So if you want to host a major, a 50-point event, that it's 3 rounds of 18 holes, or the equivalent of like 54 holes. So the idea of like a 27 and a 27 if it's only over 2 days. For nationals, like I held it over 3 days. Typically for me, it's the I like multiple rounds. I typically like at least three, trying to get in as much as I can. I typically like only 3 and not do a Super 6 anymore for the fact of trying to cater to people traveling. So the idea of whether it's, like a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then allowing people to kind of travel in and around that. So normally that's what I'm looking for, trying to fit in 3 rounds, depending on the number of players, whether it's tee times in 3 days, or if I can sneak it into just a weekend and making it 2 rounds the first day and then 1 round the second day.
Yeah. I guess it depends on Sorry, Robert.
Sorry. Just to add to that, Brady, as well. Like, I think with how, explosive the growth for the sport has been, we've just been quite exclusively lucky beforehand to be able to play, only a field of 72. Let's play 2 rounds a day. We get 4 rounds done over the course of 2 days. Everyone plays heaps of disc golf. Everyone's happy. Whereas now the demand is so much higher that it's just not an option anymore, unfortunately, unless you have 2 courses where you can split the field and then that way cater for more people. Just how quickly we've been seeing tournaments sell out. That's basically what's sort of guiding of how the tournament format's going to be, in my opinion.
Yeah, I was going to mention that it's kind of region, depends on the region, how much interest there is. Like for past years in Tamanui, we've been able to do 4 rounds, which I love 4 rounds. The more golf, the better. But now it's changing where, like you say, you just can't get away with 4 rounds at all. Or you need the 2 courses or long weekends.
Not 4 rounds in 2 days, anyway.
Oh, come on, bro.
Yeah.
No, like it's moving away from that.
Got to the point where you're leaving far too late in the day. I'm feeling for us anyway that just going 2 rounds on the Saturday and then the tee times on the Sunday is working pretty well so far, and it gets everyone out the door at a reasonable hour, especially since a lot of our tournaments are sort of out in the middle of nowhere. People need to drive to get back to wherever they've come from.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
Yeah, I mean, what are people's thoughts on the on whether you go for a larger, like one course with tee times or multiple courses with a shotgun start? Hayden, what are your thoughts here?
Oh, both if you can. Just going back to that player experience, no one's really mentioned the swag bag, the good times that you take away from the event rather than just the format and how many holes you play. Because I think previously and over the years that I've been involved for 10, 12 years, it's all about how many rounds you can play at a time rather than the overall enjoyment. Because I know there's like Robert's mentioned, is the growth of the sport now. If you want 200 players, they're not all going to be wanting to play all day, every day throughout the weekend. They want to have other cool shit happening. So player experience for me is giveaways, side projects, and the golf itself will naturally play out. Like the pros will be cool to watch. The MA40s will battle down here and the MA40s, and everyone will have a good time. But the overall experience and the extra stuff that you add on is going to attract so many more people than just the 72 or the 144 or the however many you get along. You have to have more stuff happening, I think, back to player experience. In terms of tee times versus shotgun starts, it's all about the numbers that you have. It's an algorithm, really. You have to understand how many holes you have versus how much time you can fit in. And then if you've got a super long course, then there's no point trying to squeeze it in twice because it's hard work. Like, players don't want to just be busted at the end of the day. Like, they want to have a good time. They've traveled away. They want to be, like Morgan said, they want to get home early Sunday. If it's a Sunday or a Monday holiday, they need to be finished by 1 o'clock. Everyone needs to get home safe. I don't know. I guess it's not that wasn't a yes or no question, I guess. Sorry, Matt. You have to balance it off on what you've got available, I suppose.
Yeah.
So do you think it really just depends on depends on the event and the time of year and the dates you got available? Jacko, what as a player, do you feel like you're getting enough golf from the tournaments that you've been to most recently, or do you want to see more or less, or is it about right?
It just depends on the course, eh? You know, like if you're playing one of the longer courses, then it's kind of hard to send everyone out to do a shotgun start. So you kind of have to stagger the tee time. So there's the whole day gone staggering tee times. You know what I mean? It's kind of hard for the more professional end of it. Like there's like 20% of us, and then the rest of the field is 80. The rest of the 80% is generally amateurs, or you know, there's some pro masters, but it's generally amateurs. So you got to kind of cater to everyone, you know what I mean? So it depends on the course, really. You know, you can only do what the course allows and what you can kind of fit into the day.
I think catering to everyone will be easier going forward if we have that new point system. Just with being able to split groups up more easily over 2 courses or 2 layouts or whatever to accommodate more people. I don't think that would hinder too much on like the format of events, but it's just going to allow more people to be at them and group together as such.
Yeah.
What about playing more courses? So, like, do you find that there's an advantage or a disadvantage to playing different courses at a tournament, or do you think that sticking to the one course where you've maybe had a chance to practice is the right way?
I feel like it's more professional in the sense that, like, if you're talking about the States, most of their tournaments now are spread out over a couple courses, like their premier events. And I think I've only played one tournament in New Zealand that was over 2 courses, but it worked well if the courses were near each other, which not all of them are, obviously, in some cities, but it does work, and I feel like it adds separation between people. Like some people might be more dominant at one course and some people might fall behind at the other course, and they have to counteract that by playing well at one of the other.
Can I jump in on that, Bray? Just when you've got multiple courses, and this is from playing experience, and this sort of goes back to what Hayes was saying, is about the overall experience. And I think Jacko and a couple of you other guys would have experienced this too, is when you're playing different courses and sometimes on different days, is you actually lose out on that experience of the whole tournament because you don't even see half the field. And right now, where New Zealand disc golf's at, what you touched on before with 80%, as Jacko said, is amateurs, those people are there for the experience and to enjoy each other's company just as much as you're there for the disc golf.
Yeah, I agree too. Right? It is like a catch-22 almost scenario, isn't it?
Yeah. And the experience of watching the lead cards come through at nationals, which is the most recent experience I've had of this, was great fun and part of the tournament experience, right? So it would be quite frustrating. I'd find if I had to travel across town, or it was otherwise harder for me to watch those final cards come in. Because I think it's a nice way to round off a tournament, right? So yeah. Well, what are people's thoughts on like Super Sixes? They seem to be fizzled out. I've got my own views. I won't express them, but what are everybody's views on Super Sixes? Bray, what do you think? Do you like them?
I'm in the middle. And if I stick around to watch it, I do enjoy watching like the best of the best from that event, like smashing it out in front of a gallery. And then if I do hang around, I hate having to hang around for another hour and a half after I finish my round to travel. That's all. That's literally my only gripe with them, is just delaying leaving. Apart from that, I do enjoy watching them, and it is good to have a showcase because people have earned the right to be showcased in front of people.
Yeah,
that's my.
Any supporters of them?
I mean, to be fair, like I miss them. Like having played in them, like having earned them, and like that kind of stuff. And like it was a lot different back. Like Jackson would have remembered it. Like 8, 9, 10 years ago, where like you only had 30 to 40 people showing, so you never had that gallery because everyone was playing in the shotgun start. But now with these big fields, like we saw it at nationals, that idea that. And like you would have seen it in Topo or in like the Southern Smack as well, is that lead cards coming in. Everyone who's played because of the field size and because of tee times is already watching it. So it's already kind of like we're getting that Super 6 experience without needing that additional event. And I would argue, like Hayden's kind of talked about it, of that there needs to be kind of more going on. And so the idea of like, I think these exhibitions in like a Super 6 format, probably as New Zealand used to know it, might be dying or dead. But the idea of like having exhibition matches, exhibition nines, you know, like having people like filmed rounds, whether before or after a tournament, I think are probably something that'll start to filter in.
Jacko, you would have played in plenty. Did you find them mature, or were they something that you looked forward to, or did you think, "Oh, hold it, I've already won. Why am I being forced to play another 6 holes or whatever?"
You know, like Brady said, back when there was like getting 50 to a tournament was a big thing, or 60. You know what I mean? It was like a badge, like you earned your Super 6. You know, like it was like, oh, I made Super 6 this weekend or this. You know, so it's kind of. But I think, like as Brady touched on, the lead card now is the new Super 6 as they come in for that whole showcase scenario. You know, that lead card's earned their right throughout the weekend of however many rounds it's been to have that gallery and that extra pressure and that kind of prestige of having people watch you play. Really, so I think it's a bit of a dying thing now. You know, the Super 6. It used to be like a badge of honor. You made Super 6. You cut off. You couldn't come worse than 6. You know what I mean? Like, I remember my first tournament, the first one I travelled for anyway, down Christchurch at the up in the Port Hills. What is it?
Yeah, the
Fling.
I remember I made Super 6 and it was like, wow, it was such a big deal. You know what I mean? But I think now that's changed. There's too many people like Bray said, waiting to get home. People do enjoy watching it, but another hour and a half getting home in the light versus the dark is, you know, kind of a big deal. So I think it's kind of fizzling out, but there's enough.
But you do have the option to go home, you know, while that Super 6 is playing. I mean, sometimes you feel like a bit of an egg for leaving when that's happening, but, you know, people have got places to be. But,
of course.
You know, we still run one at Wahitapu, and it seems like it's gained in popularity over the years. You know, people watching you, Jacko, smashing that long downhill hole down the road. You know, going in the creek and taking par on a par 4, 200 and something meters after going OB. That was one of the best things people have seen in disc golf around New Zealand, shot-wise, you know, and people keep coming back for that. So, I mean, it might be dwindling in some places, and Wahi is the only one that we're going to probably run one at. We're not running one at Sub-Zero this weekend. But since we trialled it up in Ohau, it's worked, and I'm still for it, but it's just situational. I guess there's definitely a lot of tournaments where it's not needed. Going back to the fling up the hill there, I bet that after you'd done your rounds, then you had to go to Super 6 and hike back up that hill again. You were really loving it.
I was a newbie, mate. I was loving it.
Yeah.
It is situational, and it'd almost be cool if it became like a marquee, like a particular event's marquee thing, if you know what I mean. Like Lismore does one every year, and that's fine. And then like Ohau or Wahitapu has one every year, but that's almost about it now for the South Island. And like that's fine. That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, with tee times, and Mike's made the made the point. Maybe the league card starting sort of 20 minutes, half an hour after it would otherwise start creates that Super 6 experience for everybody without delaying the end too much. So maybe that's the way forward.
Sorry, Matt.
No, go on.
I was gonna say, if any of you guys here have ran a tournament with tee times and just delaying that lead card or the chase and lead card by that extra 5-10 minute block, like the gallery comes, like they go find those last cards after their round and they go and follow. Like I just noticed that at the Smash, there's probably 40, if not more, maybe following that lead card for the final 5, 6, 7 holes.
Yeah,
like they go.
Are there still any in the North Island?
What was that?
Say again.
Do we still have any Super 6s in the North Island, or are they all done? You still doing one, Hades?
Oh, I've never done a Super 6. What we did do at Taupo was we had shotgun starts on the Monday because it was Monday public holiday. We wanted people to get home. we only had the golf club till 1 o'clock. So we shotgun started at Spa Park and then shotgun started at the golf club at the same time. So it was simultaneous courses, but we ran the chase card, the MA1 card, I think, and the lead card half an hour later. And so that gave everyone a chance. It was only a 5-minute drive away down to Spa Park. So by the time everyone got back from Spa Park, and we kind of announced it and said, like, as soon as you finish, make your way back and hang out around the car park. And hole 7 to 16, 17, and 18 came right back towards the car park. So you could see all the way down all of the fairways pretty much. And by the time the lead cards were on 16, everyone was back from all the other courses. We had 120 people kind of mingling around waiting for prize giving. They waited about 15 minutes, and then prize giving was like as soon as they finished, done. And then half an hour later, everyone was driving home. So that for me,
you've created that. You've created that Super 6 experience by just delaying those start times of those cards, and that might be the way to do it. Hey? I want to move on. The next question I had has actually been asked far more articulately than I could have done by somebody in the comments. So here we go. When designing or modifying a course for a tournament, what is the main priority? Difficulty, score separation, iconic holes, course flow, or something else? Hayden, let's start with you. What do you think?
Again, designing a course that allows many, many different varieties or level of player to be able to play it. Again, Topor, if you look right back to Woodhill, it's got 3 layouts. So any tournament has 3 layout positions. This guy up there, Roberts, where's my finger pointing? Decisions. I can't even point the right direction. I'm not sure which one's pointing. For the 6 tour, to be able to allow for 3 different levels of player playing off 3 different pads it's the change that we've been waiting for so long. So it answers all of the questions. All 3 layouts should be difficult enough for the divisions. All of that, the course flow should work with, if you wanted to mix recreation in with the pros, the recreation bluff a way shorter tee. It's super quick, and then you can literally you can mix them, the algorithm, going back to the algorithm and mixing them in. So the course flow is all taken care of with shortened tee pads. Yes.
But what I want to know is, what's the main priority? It's important that they're all there, all right, and considered. But is there one that you think, actually, if we're going to get something, if we're going to get one thing right, it's this?
No. I'll go for E, all of the above. Sorry. Final answer.
Okay. For example, when we're designing the Tuckerbeach Rush extended course, there's just too many things at once that you have to think about. And it's not like, we can't do this because we have to do that. There's sometimes compromise you have to make because of the flow, and to try and make the iconic holes, or make some holes more difficult, some more easy to sort of cater for. Some holes will be catered for the pros, some will be catered for some AMs to also be able to. All of the holes are unreachable. You still want to make everyone enjoying the course, which will now help obviously with the different layout options and everything. But again, like if you had to pick one, I'd say it would probably be the flow. It has to be flowing nicely rather than 15-minute walks after every hole. It doesn't matter how iconic they are. It's going to take you all day if it's 15 minutes in between each hole.
Morgan, you've designed the course for Sub-Zero this weekend. What was going through your mind when you were putting the course together?
Well, I mean, we took four people out there, and we sort of just all came up with our ideas and just sort of molded them all together into the best possible layout that we could. It's a little bit trickier with a ball golf course because obviously you've got no elevation. The trees are all going to be down the sides. You're always going to have generally a clear fairway. So just trying to integrate trees into it on a ball golf course. But flow's quite a big one. Try not to have too many narrow points where cards back up, choke points. And looking back to Montana Flat, sorry to go away from Sub-Zero, but just looking back to Montana Flat, I think what we looked at there is we made sure we had some easy enough holes. We really wanted to challenge the players at that course. There's a lot of talent coming through right now. You want to actually challenge these guys. You don't want to have something where you're just going and smashing a 10 to 16 down every time. Not on a tournament course. It's sweet as like a Queenstown Gardens, Invercargill, wherever. But with a tournament course, you really want to be challenging the players. whether it be with OBs, natural or man-made, bringing in some elevation if it is possible, and just making them really have to shape shots, I guess, is probably something that I look at when we're doing tournament course setup.
Well-designed holes is what you're saying. That's a crucial thing. Is just, generally something has to give depending on the location and where you're at.
Yeah, totally.
In the ideal world, you can have 3 tees. That's awesome. But generally, I think just when designing a course or considering layouts for tournaments and stuff, just great holes. Holes people remember. It can't make every hole iconic, and every hole can't be the signature hole, but just holes people, just well thought out holes just go a long way in people's experiences for sure.
Yep.
100%.
Brady, what are your thoughts on this?
Same. I have to say flow is super important to me. And the idea of like having stuff that is safe, that you don't have like super walks in between, like that you're not throwing on people constantly, like we've run into that in the past with some of the smaller courses around New Zealand like you have greens and tees and fairways that are just too close. And so you're kind of like throwing on each other and it's just not safe. And so like that idea, you're not able to like relax and enjoy the golf or like just focus on your own game because you constantly have everything else going on. So I think Jackson said it right, like depending on the land and something's got to give. And so for me, it's well, if it still flows right and maybe not every hole is a signature iconic hole, but there's still some handful of good ones. And for me, the kind of balance too, the idea that there are some open shots or some wooded shots or some forehand shots or some backhand shots for all players and all abilities.
Forcing
and so, that idea of, I tend to like natural OBs versus artificial OBs, but as Morgan said, and as Jacko said, sometimes you just got to make do with what you have. And so, you kind of have to manufacture things where you do. But having a good course with good flow is kind of probably the most important for me.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you very much for that question. It was very well written. So talk us through some of we've had an announcement earlier on today about the divisional splits that are coming. And Robert, so I'm going to come to you first to perhaps briefly just explain what's happened here. And then we'll go to the panel for thoughts. So Roberts, just talk us through the kind of divisional splits that were announced earlier on this week.
So basically what it all sort of stems from is having some divisions that would basically be wanting to play a shorter course, different layout per se for a tournament that won't be playing, say, the big Waikawa course, for example. They just, wouldn't handle it, say, for example, MA60s or juniors or ladies or whatever. So that's where it comes down to, how do we compare all of these in a tournament? So at the moment we have literally one formula, everyone puts in the same pool, you have to have the same conditions. So to do away with that, what I'm proposing is split the divisions up within scoring groups. So similar sort of playing level, group them together, have some sort of numbers, not always going to be the same sort of numbers wise, but sort of group them together so that the similar playing levels play against a similar playing level and they battle for the same amount of points, rather than having them, okay, if they're playing from a BTs, therefore we just drop down to the 40-pointer or drop less points, and this sort of takes away from their experience. So that's what my sort of go-to was, okay, how do we make this all work? So that way I'm trying to sort of introduce what I call this tour scoring groups. So group the divisions together with similar sort of level of play. So that way they can battle out for the points within the division. Say Open would just be by themselves with the addition of Pro Masters. MA1's been the biggest division that we've had this past couple of years. So it's been growing crazy. Have them by themselves, they just battle it out. There's enough of them to count the points. And that would allow them to TD the option, okay, we actually have 2 courses nearby. Let's just split the field over the 2 days. Some plays there. If it's 3 days, it allows you to say some divisions play one course twice, another one just once. And in the current option that we have with the tour points formulas, that was just not an option. So this is kind of my train of thought of how to make it work. over the different divisions and sort of still make it fair. So that's the way it allows, even if everyone plays the same course, everything's exactly the same, we just still calculate the points within these scoring groups. So that would allow, so across the board, across the whole year, it wouldn't advantage some tournaments where there's that split, where they actually have a chance to fight for the top points, whereas other tournaments, they don't have that option, then they always only fight for the low points. So now it's always the same across the board. So that's kind of the way I came up with it.
So you've got MPO and MP40 in one group, MA1 in a group, MA40, MA50, and MA2 in a group, and then essentially everyone else in a group.
Correct. So, and that's not set in stone. That's something I've been proposing, and I've been trying to get some feedback out of everyone. And there was some sort of I think I moved one of the divisions around thanks to Hayden, and there's still there's room for it. And what I've introduced there's the Masters that have so far always been just the Masters. Mm-hmm. There was some quite big division over Nationals this year, and Pro Masters have been quite vocal that they want to play long course. And that's basically what I'm proposing. Hey, you guys want to play with a big, MPO? That's totally fine. Have a separate MA40. They can play, if there is the option. This is only talking if there's that option. If there's a shorter course, they can play the shorter, different layout, different course, whatever. And then also they've added the MA2 because not all the new sort of up and coming players. There will be an MA3 division or even an MA4, but that MA2 addition in that lower scoring group allows then to TD to have the Rex or whatever slower divisions to play like even a shorter course, and they can be still competitive for the tour points.
Yep. Okay.
Because again, I think same in nationals as well. Like it showed that the MA1 is actually quite a competitive division. It's not like it's just advanced. They only play BTs. No, they also want to play the big course. They're just not ready for that step up for the Open yet.
Mm.
Who's got a thought on this?
I love it.
That's
my thought.
Feedback, please help me on feedback.
And the thing was, like Robert said, he asked for feedback. There was some came back, and so he announced something that worked on facts and figures. He didn't just randomly come up with it. He's spent hours and hours and hours and hours of time designing it. And it's a trial one. So if it doesn't work, we'll try something different. There's no handbook. There's no this is how we do it. Well played for making a move, modernizing the whole tour, and let's give it a go. If it doesn't work, we can sit down again and have another change. But at the moment, it's the best thing in the New Zealand tour in my mind.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with Hayden. I like the idea of splitting it up into the abilities of the divisions rather than having, just for example, like the advanced women or something, and then they're only coming away with less than 10 points for an event, even though they might have shot all above their ratings or anything like that. So it gives them a chance to battle out for more points.
So I think this should help a lot with the scores from different tournaments. It should be a bit more comparable between the 5 and the 4 or 30. It would be very dependent on how big the field was and the correct point system. Whereas now, if you have only them in their field, then it's going to be a lot more comparable. Okay, all the ladies compared to all the other ladies in this other tournament. Okay, who came away with the bigger points and stuff like that. And I had pretty good feedback from Mike Foley, who proposed, how about we look into converting the ratings into points, which I thought was brilliant as well. But again, it would need a lot of thought to be put into it. But I think that should be something we can investigate as well.
Yeah, I mean, the point about ratings determining division eligibility, especially perhaps in Masters and in the amateur divisions, is an interesting one because obviously the PDGA give us a guideline in there, but it's based on US numbers, which aren't really transferable to New Zealand yet. And so I guess my next question is when it comes to deciding what divisions you're going to offer, how do you come up with deciding whether you're going to offer MA1 through 4 or just MA1 and MA2, for example, or we quite often just see FA1 and we don't see FA 1, 2, 3, 4. Is it simply just a case of you want there's a correct number of people to have in a division that feels right, and then you try and split the field so that you get those kind of divisional sizes? What do you think, Bray? What are you intending on running at? Because you're helping to run the South Island Nationals next year, right? So
Yep.
you're going to be thinking about this probably already.
Yep.
What divisions are you thinking about offering?
For amateur divisions wise, definitely an MA2 again. We ran it for the first time this year, it's intermediate. I'm not sure what the ratings is for it. I think it's like 850 to 900 or something is intermediate, based off the USA guidelines. We got a trophy, like one of our proper big trophies made up for it. And that was actually really good to watch the disc golf, because that whole division was tight between the amateurs. And in the intermediate for the women's side of things, the amount of numbers isn't quite there yet, in my opinion, to justify having another division for that. Like, we're only seeing half a dozen to a dozen in the FA1 anyway. And then in FPO, we're only seeing a handful at best. So I just don't think it's quite there yet to bring in more divisions for that level. On the pro side of things, we're going to be looking at doing MPO, FPO, definitely MP40 and 50. I don't know. I don't think there is any need to do a FP40. So they would probably just fall into the FPO category, but we're definitely going to be pushing for the more professional divisions to spread out the cash payouts, which I guess is another subject. We're not on that, but the more I can spread them out across the divisions, the better, but not excessively. Like, I know we're probably going to get 50 for advanced, if not more, and like, that's fine. They're all playing in about that level where they should be anyway. And like the MA2s, they know that they feel like that's where they are, and that's fine. And then I think MA3 is rec, or there might be MA4. And I think rec divisions it gets tricky with A tiers. I'm not sure if you can actually run them, or if they have to run off like a different format. But yeah, I feel like there's a grey area there, so I need to look into that more before announcing anything.
Hayden, you had at Topor, you ran MA1 through 3, I think, or was it MA1, MA2, and MA4? You had three amateur divisions that were all relatively similarly sized, and I think it was 3. What made you go with 3 and not 4? And it's not a criticism. I'm just interested to know, was it just logistics, ease of setting up, or what was the thought there?
No, that's fine. No, so we estimated 160 players right from the get-go, and so then breaking it up into the player base that we wanted, we knew that was going to be lots of people MA1, and we're going to focus our event around the red tees. We had blue tees, red tees, black tees. We're going to focus around the red tees because it was the largest market, and then but we knew that there was going to be a lot of players that weren't able to play at that level. But so my philosophy on it a little bit is you should be able to play to your best advantage and make chase card or lead card if you have a really good round at your level. So hard to explain. So I always encourage MA1 players to not move up to MPO until they've played in the chase card a number of times and potentially made lead card once, because your mindset is now ready to take it to the next level. So I encourage people to play MA2 or under MA1 just to have way more tournament experience. And because with COVID at the time, I hate the word, we knew the market was going to be limited, so we had to really make the most of who was going to come to our event, and that was our MA2 market and FA3 market, which is recreational ladies. We ended up with 24 or 26 ladies in the whole tournament, and we had one FPO that ended up stepping down to FA1 anyway, and then 8 in FA1, and everyone else was below that and had a ball, like literally had a ball the whole time they were there. So we had to kind of work out who we were attracting our event to, and at the time it was like, it's a tough time for MPOs to come traveling across the country. We get that. There's not many MPOs, as Jackson mentioned, so we weren't expecting to get a ton of them there, so we had to like offer more divisions below the MA1. And yeah, MA2 is a good MA2. There's a lot of good players in MA2. There's some hot players there now, and I really look forward to them moving forwards. And MA4 novice probably not needed per se. Recreation was a pretty fun weekend. It was only 2 rounds instead of 3. I think anything more than 160, maybe we're looking at 200 next year, and maybe we might offer a novice, but it'd probably be a side event, maybe a Thursday night local thing beforehand or something like that. But there's enough players at tournaments now, big tournaments, Nationals, North Island Champs, South Island Champs should all track to over 150 players, so then you can offer 3 or 4 divisions in each thing.
Does NZDG, or does there need to be a consensus amongst tournament directors generally to kind of direct people into which division to be in? Because the ratings suggestions that are on that the PDGA provide, right, suggest that a 935 is the cap for MA2, right? And there's probably not too many 930 rated players playing in MA2, and they might raise a few eyebrows in New Zealand if they did. Do you think NZDG or something similar needs to come in and say, right, for New Zealand, these are our suggested ratings for the division? Or do you think it's actually fine and we don't need to do anything about it? Roberts, what do you think?
I like how you used suggest, and I think that is the way. Like, we can always suggest, but I think at the end of the day, like, it's going to be the players themselves that have already been doing this. They kind of set off where they want to play, and if there was ever like someone above the skill level of said division playing there, he's always going to get those death stares or weird questions about like, well, why don't you just move up a division? You're clearly out of place.
You'll get a mention on this show, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And there's only so long you can do that for. Like, I'm doing this because, and there will be always a reason or whatever. I think it's an open thing, and there is definitely room for NZDG to set that for the tour events, and it could be something to look into.
Okay. Anyone else have some thoughts on this?
Their ratings, like what they cap it off at, you could almost drop it 20 points for New Zealand for our.
At least.
That's fair to say.
I was going to say at least. Yeah.
Like currently I'm rated 1,001. If I was to go to the States right now, there's plenty of 970 rated players that would be our New Zealand 1,000. Just to put it in perspective.
Yeah, I think you're
so
right.
the guideline might, NZ we probably do need our own guidelines around divisions.
I feel like we do, but I also don't want to.
Statistics team look into this and sort of compare the New Zealand players playing overseas and compare the ratings drop or rise. Because in my view, when I only played for about a year in New Zealand, we went back to Europe, to Estonia, and played there, and I felt like, man, like I'm just starting all over again, because like I expected to play to my rating that I had established here in New Zealand, and I was just playing like those solid 30, 40 points below it. And I think there's already been some research about how Europe's actually underrated compared to the States. And then I think New Zealand is the opposite. New Zealand, I think, is greatly overrated compared to the level we expect from the ratings of PDGA at the moment.
I mean, and that's fair. I think there's some evidence or some research that has shown that playing in a stacked field can help give a higher rating than might otherwise you experience from the same score, right? So essentially into the calculator, and my analytics team will have to do a little bit more digging on this, but essentially into the calculator, it depends on the people who are playing in the tournament and the distance that the course is played over are two of the factors that it considers. And there's some evidence to suggest that playing in if you went and played in the Disc Golf Pro Tour, then you might end up with a higher rating than you might otherwise do. You might still get your ass kicked, but you might otherwise come out with a higher rating than you might otherwise had you not played with those players. But I don't know. That's an interesting one.
Well, Australia does a pretty good job. Like I've seen it, they've done it in the past that they've altered their levels. So the idea that rather than being 970 and above is to play in the MPO division. It's 950 and above for Australia. But they also have, it wasn't up until probably the last, like, say 2 to 3 years that New Zealand has been doing a lot of this PDGA membership, PDGA events. So a majority of the players now have ratings and have membership and that kind of stuff. But like in the past, and Jackson and Hayden can attest to it, the idea that like we didn't have ratings. We didn't have this division and like that. So, there was a little bit of the, like, one, you didn't have the multiple divisions to play in. And two, like, you didn't have the rating if there were multiple divisions to know where to go. And so, it might be something for the future New Zealand board to kind of look at of, Australia has kind of done this, Europe has kind of done this. Would either one of those kind of help or work for us here in New Zealand?
Yeah. Looks like we've just lost Morgan, but that's all right. He'll jump back in. I'd like to move us on.
Got that O'Marama internet going on.
Yeah, that's right. So I think he was taking all of it for a moment, and so my next, I want to move on to the costs of tournaments and what represents value as a player. The tour this year has had events that have had a wide-ranging cost, some as low as like $50 and some up towards 150, 160 for some divisions. Talk us through, if you can, and you don't need to be specific, but talk us through how you might go about costing a tournament. What are you, as a tournament director, looking to make from it, if anything, in sort of financial gain? Whether it be for you or for a club, and then how do you go about ensuring that the AMs and the pros get a kind of equivalent level of value from prizes, players packs, experience, whatever it might be? Big question. Who wants to kick us off?
I can.
Go for it.
We want to. Okay. I think straight away this is something that's not looked into enough. Or looked at enough as the financials around tournaments. And I can only speak on behalf of Disc Golf South, because it's the only funding financials I know of the tournaments. And since I've been there, I've ran 3 tournaments, and not one of them we've made more than $100 off the entire event. Like it's not for us anyway. It's not about lining the club's account. It's about the player experience and how can we utilize the money from entry fees and sponsorship for the players, whether it be the lunch packs, like we've done hot food for the latest lunches. Like it was finish your round, you went upstairs and you got your food served to you from a kitchen. You sat down and ate. Player packs, like we've gone all in on player packs in the past, like thousands and thousands spent on Innova and Discraft and whatnot, just for the players. And I think, look, going forward, we might even just make that an optional thing on registration, because not everybody wants that in their entry fee cost. So like that's something to look into. And then cash payouts and prizes and trophies and engraving, all of those things that go into the events.
Jacko, as a player, you may not be looking at the cost, and that might not be a barrier for you, but I'm sure maybe in your earlier playing days, perhaps it might have been, or at least something that you considered. What do you look for what would you look for, do you think, when looking for value from a tournament, depending on the entry fee and then what you subsequently get out of it, whether it's experience or goodies or a hot lunch or whatever?
It always helps if you get a nice substantial lunch. You know what I mean? That always helps. That's all part of it. It's like I said before. There's only for that MPO. There's not a lot of us around, you know what I mean? So the experience for me is playing for the cash payout, and obviously the prestige of the position you finish, of course. Yeah, so yeah, it's kind of changed a lot in the last 3 or 4 years. Like there used to be so many tournaments where you just. I used to jokingly say it, and it's no offense to anyone, but I used to say, "Oh, I'm competing for these $10 trophies, but I'm paying $40 plus." You know what I mean? Like as prestige, you got the Super Six, etc., and all of that. You know, but these days there's so many tournaments you can kind of pick and choose where you want to go. You know the field's going to be big, so you know the payout's going to be worth your travel, because it all adds up these days. You know, just getting there itself, the tournament, everything. So it has to, from my perspective, on the professional side, it has to be worth it financially. You know, and obviously there's trophies you try and gain or defend or whatever it may be. That's kind of the perspective these days I have on it. Back when I first started, it was all like players packs and, like Hayden said, all the goodies on the sides, you know. And that's cool. Like that's 80% of the market or the field these days, you know. Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm looking at personally these days.
Yep.
Brady and Hayden, you've run 2 big tournaments this year, most recently. What are your thoughts on this one?
I'll take it, Hayden. Yeah. For me, having run tournaments for a long time, I'm always kind of like Bray, you know, like trying to break even, you know, like and trying to budget better every year. You know, and Jackson put it right, you know, like that you can cater and like have big payouts, and you know, like that's one thing, and catering to certain divisions, you can have prizes and goodies and cater for like more players, and so, you know, like it's kind of hard to strike that balance. And so typically when I'm running an event, I'm always trying to keep my costs low, because I know what it was like when I was first, like Jackson said, everything adds up. And so, you know, like when it's a $40 event is great, because you're going to spend so much money, you know, like trying to get to the event, putting yourself up, eating yourself on the road. And so the idea that, you know, it's tough to, you know, like to budget an event, you know, like, and it's, you know, Hayes talked about to Topor, and, you know, like it was super hard at nationals, especially because of, you know, like that crazy little virus that's going around the place, you know, of how many people am I going to be, like how many divisions am I going to be, you know, like how can I like kind of foreshadow and, you know, like you're kind of taking a bet, you're taking a punt on, you know, like who's going to show up and in what division, and to make sure that you're kind of breaking even, you know, and some people think, you know, that, yeah, professionals in the States, this is a full-time job, and, you know, like all they're doing is running tournaments, you know, but when you're, you know, a part-time and a volunteer, you know, if I'm personally for my events happy to break even, I'm not really trying to make a lot of money, if any, maybe a couple dollars a player if I'm lucky, if I've budgeted correctly. But, you know, there's always that stuff that pops up because of weather, because of injuries, because of insurance, because of food or catering or whatever. So yeah, you know, like for me, it's that player experience, and trying to cater to as many people as I can. You know, like, and I've learned my lessons over the years. And so it just kind of takes time and balance for me. But yeah, you know, like mine's keep the cost as low as I can, and then try to break even for the whole event, is the ultimate goal.
But hold it, right? And you know, my experience is running some very small events, but I was witness to you to running nationals, and so I saw the amount of work that goes in. Right, there's a whole heap of work that goes in, and that's for the smaller tournaments, let alone the ones the size of Topor or the Smash or Nationals. So shouldn't you get paid for that, for running an event like that? If you were putting on a show for someone, right, and you were organizing something that was going to entertain a group of people for a weekend, and you were organizing essentially all of their entertainment from and their food potentially for at least sort of one of the days, shouldn't you be paid for that?
If like Morgan's a business, so Morgan running tournaments and making money off tournaments, that's how it should be. Same goes for Hayden. Like he has a brand that has to profit from hosting events, and like Disc Golf South is not a company like we in that regard though. That's all. Like, you know, we don't need to line the club's pockets and as such. But yeah, I think the boys that have business ties definitely could probably.
And I think
talk more about
that's
that.
that's where it's kind of establishing a bit of a sort of evolution of the tournaments in the country as well. Is depends on who's organizing the tournament. You'll have clubs organizing which don't have to turn a profit because all the clubs are just volunteers, and all they want to do is run a good event, and they're in it for the good time. Whereas if there is a business that's running a tournament, obviously that's all they're looking to do. They don't do it for charity. They do it for some sort of a gain. They want like at least break even or get something out of it so they can put it back into the sport and keep growing. So that's my take on it. Like it has to, I 100% agree. The TDs have to be, rewarded if that's what they're in there for. Like if they run it for, and again, like if they are rewarded, then again, you can ask off the TD a little bit more than, some sort of club that's just doing it
right.
for.
Yeah.
So there can be a lot more sort of expectations of, a high level. And I think if you're setting the price for your tournament higher, again, as a player, I would then expect more of the tournament if the price is higher.
Hayden, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think there's a fine balance between a commercial operator, like Robert said, making enough to cover costs. Because if you look at the breakdown of the hours put into any event that I've ever run, it's anything I make at the end is a token gesture. Like every single person watching this makes more money per hour than I would running that event. The joy of Topol, for example, and some up and coming stuff that we're working with this year is they made good money. They made enough money to pay off the brand new baskets that they put in Spa Park that were delivered that same weekend, and they literally just paid the invoice straight away. They didn't have to come up with it, didn't have to get funding from the event. Prior to the end of the event, we went, how much do you need? What would be a good figure? And let's try and make that sum of money, but not at the disadvantage of the player experience. I wanted everything to be under $100. It was a 3-day event, like Matt said. We looked after them for the whole time. We had all this cool shit happening throughout the weekend. $30 a day. You got to play at golf club twice. Got to play at Spa Park twice. There is a balance between all of what we were talking about. So balance potentially. Yeah. Be nice for the TDs to make a wee bit of money, but also as long as the club involved in the region is also making something from it, I think that's important. Yeah.
Morgan, you joined us sort of halfway, or rejoined us back halfway through this question. We're talking about tournament costs and whether TDs should profit financially from running tournaments. Some differing views. What are yours?
First of all, sorry for the technical difficulties. I'll just blame Omarimus straight off the bat. Horrible Wi-Fi, horrible plug sockets. It's all terrible. The golf will be good though. As Hades was saying, sorry, not even Hades, Bray, as me and Hades, we're business.
Oh no. No, you're there.
Oh dear.
Morgs.
Okay.
Oh no.
Yeah, look, I think it's an interesting one, right? Because we'll just spare Morgan the embarrassment for the moment. I think it's a key one that's going to be even more scrutinized looking forward, right? As tournaments get bigger. Hayden, you quoted that you're looking at over 200 next year for Topol. As tournaments get bigger and as costs invariably go up, because even like the cost of providing lunch for everybody is going to be a bit more this year than it was last year, right? There's going to be a greater demand for value or perceived value. It's difficult to say really, because like a lot of people will, and there's been some comments in the from the audience saying, some people look forward to a players pack and love to get the tournament stamp disc and so they can put it on the wall or as a memento or whatever. And then some people aren't bothered by it and it probably sits in a bin in the garage for forevermore. So I think getting that balance is probably quite right. Again. Does NZDG have a role to play here in terms of the kind of financial regularity or a regulatory of tournaments, or do you think they should just butt out and let TDs do their thing?
I think that's almost a next week question.
I have actually
Maybe.
to sort of say, hey, how about we put out some guidelines? But I think it's just too hard. It's just so varied. And I think at the end of the day now, with the sport growing so much as well, I think the players will be the ones that have the chance to say and vote for the tournaments that they go to.
Yeah, vote
By
with
the
their
way,
feet.
it's like, hey guys, everyone wants to go to this tournament because it's got a higher value. It's got everything that they want. They want to take that. And it could be that it's different for different players. Some players just want to play more golf. They some people in the comments said, I don't care about the, player specs or discs. I just throw them out. I'm there for the sport, Some people play, professionally that all they want is the MPO payouts. But at the end of the day, you have to look at where the big numbers are. That's where the newer members of the sport, they come in, and I think they're going to enjoy that, the memento of the tournament. They get a new disc and, maybe it goes straight into the bag and then straight into the pond on the next course that they go to play to. But,
Maybe. But I think if you look at many other sports, certainly perhaps ones that are a little bit more established than disc golf, if you turned up to a tournament, you probably wouldn't be shocked to discover you had to pay to enter. And then you probably also wouldn't be shocked to discover that the people who are running it were making some money from it, whether it was a club or an organization that was making money. And actually, you probably wouldn't be too annoyed or kind of, a bit peeved if they did make money from it, and you probably say, "Oh, that's fair enough." And you judge the value of the of the tournament based on your own perceived value of the money you put in, right? So I guess you're right, Roberts. People will vote with their feet, and the top tournaments will sell out in minutes. And
the top ones will sell out in an hour. So that might be the difference. That might be the
maybe.
Maybe.
And actually that brings us on to perhaps my final question for tonight is, if we were to fast forward, say, 5 years, what's the biggest difference in New Zealand tournaments? And don't just say number of people, because that's the obvious answer, right? But what's the main difference in the way the tournament's set up, perhaps to cope with the number of people difference between a tournament run now and a tournament run in 5 years' time? What do we need to change? What do we need to do differently? Jacko, any thoughts on this? You played in some big tournaments.
I think the way disc golf's going in New Zealand and the amount of players we'll have, say, in 5 years, even not so much now, but we're just at that cusp at the moment. I think it calls for like they've done in the States, kind of with like a New Zealand Pro Tour, and then like another, like just a higher level of tournament for the super competitive guys in MPO, MA1, etc., FPO. I think in 5 years' time, I can see that New Zealand will require like a Pro Tour where there's just it's a payout thing, very competitive. You're there for the course and the competition, and then there's the other side of it, which is all all goodies in the players packs, and it's always about a good experience. You know what I mean? Don't get me wrong, but that the side events and everything, all the fun stuff as well. You know what I mean? So there's I see in 5 years there's going to need to be a serious side and an amateur side sort of thing. So hopefully the the board or whoever develops some sort of scenario where we can have our own version of the Pro Tour sort of thing.
The amateur side is what's going to keep growing the sport.
Of course.
Compared to the professional.
Which will then develop more professionals,
Yep.
For sure.
Yeah, I agree with Jacko here. Like in 5 years' time, we'll definitely have a lot more specific tournaments, like not just the Pro Tour, but it will also be tournaments, say the Masters Cup New Zealand, the women's tournaments. And there will be a lot more sort of catered for some specific, because the demand will just be so much higher that there's going to be the option for the TDs. Hey, let's put on a Pro Tour. Let's put on a tournament for the ladies. And it's already, we see it happening. There's the Women's Global event. And, that's something I kind of try to put a bit more thought into the groups as well. So the way I've grouped the women's divisions in the scoring is actually allows, say, for example, the Women's Global event to be run as a women's only event. And it can still be on the tour, and it can be competitive for the New Zealand tour points as well. just to answer, I think there was a question about how this affects Women's Open early in the questions there. That's what the main reason I didn't want to split the FBO, even though they would probably be better off in a different scoring group. That's the main reason I left them with all the other women's to just allow that option. Hey, let's have a women's only event.
Yep, keeps them growing.
Brady, what do you think? 5 years time?
Yeah, I'd like, based on what I've seen in the last 5 years and what I see going forward is like, yeah, I think Jackson hit the nail right on the head. That the new board that's coming in, or like the board over the next couple of years, needs to start planting seeds for multiple tours going forward. Like we've already kind of seen it with like the 50-point events and 40-point events. So I'd argue, like Roberts has made leaps and bounds in the right direction when it comes to finally splitting the tour up. I think that NZDG could do better when it comes to following a little bit of like what the PDGA does when it comes to like the Pro Tour versus that, and so I'd love to see like in 5 years time, like the beginning of what we saw with the Disc Golf Pro Tour. So like before it took over the National Tour, it started at the MVP Open with Steve Dodge and like the disc golf festivals. So like the Green Mountain Championships, like it was like a festival and they had like beer releases and concerts and all of this kind of side stuff with like, but that catered, the tournaments that we saw covered were just the pros, but they also had like amateur events like leading up to it. The MVP Open is very notorious for the weekend before they host an amateur tournament. And then the following weekend is when they host the MVP Open. And if you win the amateur event the weekend before, you get to play on the feature card at the pro event. So like the idea of that it has this growth. So yeah, like I would argue that, right, things like the Smash, things like Topor, things like, Coastal Cup, things like Moonbase, we're starting to get tournaments that are being known and like standout events that people want to go to. Jackson's even talked about it earlier on shows of like, oh, I've not been to Moonbase yet, but I want to go. And so like as these events start to carry their own prestige, the idea of, yeah, like Jackson said, there's probably going to need to be a separation, and it would be advantageous, I would say, for the new New Zealand board to kind of plant those seeds for, okay, look, we can have a tournament that caters to the guys who want to play for cash, and maybe that's not 5 years, maybe that's more 8 to 10 years, and maybe for the next 5 years, we should focus on the MA1, MA2, MA3, you know what I mean? And like what Bray said, in that growth of the game. And so, but it would be advantageous for NZDG as our governing body to kind of cater for both, to plant both of those seeds now and see what grows, whether it's going to be an open side, an AM side, a combined, or a separate.
Yeah. Hayden, 5 years.
5 years, sorry, yeah. Got the question there for a minute. 5 years, I guess, was the question for the whole New Zealand scene?
5 years time, how does the tournament, I don't know, it could be individual tournament experience, it could be the structure and schedule of tournaments in New Zealand. How does it look differently in 5 years time to now?
Yeah, caliber, lots more caliber. So like going down Jackson's road there of having higher ranked tournaments purely for that. I like what Brady was saying about having two events within 2 weeks of each other at the same place. That's pretty cool. I'm scrambling to think what's happening in the next 12 months, to be honest, at the moment for my event scene. So 5 years, it changes so fast. 5 years ago was 2017. It was still pretty chill back then. So hard to say. I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully there'll be lots of, really epic events like we talked about, 2 or 3 around New Zealand. I think they're just all going to be epic by then. So people are going to be coming from all around the world. New Zealand disc golf scene all the courses are amazing. So we should be attracting people from all around the world.
Absolutely. And we heard about that on the show from our pros were very keen to come over. When we spoke to Scott and Paige earlier on in the year, they were both very keen to come over to New Zealand. We're gonna end it there. Thank you so much for all of you for joining us, and Morgan, if you're listening. Thank you so much for joining us for today's chat. Very insightful. Some good opinions. Very, very interesting. Certainly a lot for the new NZDG board to discuss as they as they move into the next chapter. But gents, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll catch you all later.
Cheers, boys. Hey.
Just
See
in
you
time
later.
to sign off.
Bye,
Love you, Morgan.
Sorry, team.
Okay, Brady, just before we go, we've got just to remind everybody of what's happening in the NZDG space. Now, the announcement will come on Sunday of who has put their name forward for each of the positions. And then what we'll have is over next week, we'll be reaching out to those people. And on Thursday of next week, we'll have anybody who agreed to come on the show. And hopefully they'll be around to talk to us about what it is that they feel that they can contribute and why it is that they're standing for the position they are. So it will be very interesting in next week's show. So make sure you look out for that. We'll very quickly, whilst we're here, just remind everybody of the upcoming events. So where have I got it? No, not there. There. So upcoming events, we've got Sub-Zero this weekend, Timaru in the Coastal Cup at the end of June, Tucker Beach Rush end of July. Then it's the Women's Global event in Wellington in Auckland. Both are really chugging along with their signups. I think both are in around the sort of 25 mark. So if you're a lady and you're not signed up for one of those two events, get involved. It's going to be fantastic. Then we've got the Paul Macbeth Foundation fundraiser that's happening all over New Zealand, being run by Generation Disc Golf on the 3rd of September. Tauranga Extreme a little bit later on, and then a bunch of your normal spring tournaments as we head into the rest of the year. So there we go. If you enjoyed today's show, please head over to our YouTube channel and drop us a subscribe and hit the bell for the notification. And if you've got Spotify, then give us a follow on Spotify as well. It really makes a difference for us. So thank you for that if you can. We'll see you next week when we'll have lots of chat about the new NZDG board. But wherever you're playing disc golf this week, play well, take it easy, make some birdies, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.